when we think about young generation people, so let's say Gen Z, who is very famous, renowned these days, they talk in terms of a high maturity context.
It's interesting because when you look at the theories of adult development, because sometimes the question comes up as what actually allows people to develop into those more mature phases. Yes, you can learn your way through it, but that's not usually the approach. It's usually around practices like mindfulness and meditation.
This whole emotional maturity, leaders impact the organization culture.
So when we look at more mature leaders, they tend to step back a little bit. They don't tend to want to be at the front line because they are more about, it's not themselves anymore that matters. It's more serving the greater good.
Your recommendation for organization and its leaders, how do you develop this whole so-called maturing organization?
So it's very much that framework, which is what I encourage my own clients to do, is get those heat experiences, get those challenges. It doesn't have to be abroad. It can be a project that takes you completely out of your comfort zone. Not so much that you're going to break, obviously, there's always a balance, but it's really get those experiences and get yourself out of your comfort zone of your peers.
Hey there, and welcome back to Ei Café with Azeem. Before we dive into today's conversation, I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Yes, you. For showing up, whether this is your first episode or you have been with me since the early days. I genuinely appreciate your time, your curiosity, and your willingness to grow. Now, here is something interesting I came across. Did you know that nearly 50% of podcast listeners tune in regularly but haven't actually hit the subscribe button? Which means there are good chances you might be loving the content but still missing out on the episode that could really spark a shift in your thinking, your leadership, or even your personal growth. So, if anything you have heard on this show has ever made you pause, reflect, or just feel, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite platform and drop a quick review. It truly helps others to discover the show and maybe share an episode with someone who could use a dose of inspiration today. I am committed to making each episode more meaningful, more relevant, and truly worth your time. My promise to you, I'll keep showing up with honest conversation, inspiring voices, and ideas that matters to help you grow from inside out. Alright, let's get into today's conversation. Greetings to you from Colombo, Sri Lanka. This is Ei Café with Azeem, Season 12, and I'm your host, Azeem Zahir, a human capital specialist, a Lego Serious Play facilitator, an ICF certified PCC level coach, an emotionally intelligent emotional culture deck practitioner, and one of the lead facilitators at Luminary Learning Solution. This weekly show helps you to explore the impact of emotional intelligence on our lives through engaging conversation with industry leaders, coaches, innovators, and thought leaders. We aim to inspire and empower you. Today's topic, today's episode couldn't be better timelier one. We are living in a world where change is the only constant thing which has happened, and uncertainty and complexity are no longer occasional. They are permanent residents in our work and personal lives. Yet, not every leader is equipped to embrace the unknown, and that's where the maturity in leadership steps in. Not just in terms of age or experience, but emotional maturity, cognitive maturity, and ability to lean into discomfort with clarity. So, how do we lead when the path is foggy? To have this conversation, I have one of my very good friend, and Duvaux, and is a neuroscience coach, counselor with a particular speciality in adult development and leadership maturity. She spent the first third of her career as a chartered mechanical engineer before moving into HR and leadership development in Asia and Europe. Today, she brings in a multinational focus, having grown up with two culturals and lived in 8 countries, 3 continents, while bringing more than a decade of a coaching experience in a client. And welcome to the cafe.
Thank you, Azeem. I'm excited.
Right. First and foremost, thank you very much for saying yes and joining the cafe. And of course, you are coming a very beautiful background to the cafe today. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you very much. Right. On that note, let's get started with our first question. Yeah. So, and you have been working on the space for some time. Leading with maturity is something people are talking about. I know David Clutterbuck talks about coaching maturity. I'm trying to really understand how this piece of, leading with maturity really focus in. So, how do you get uncomfortable with uncertainty and complexity? Where does the whole piece come from? Is something everybody talk about, but what exactly this whole piece is something we are going to start off. So my question for you is, the first question is, when we say leading with maturity, does that really mean beyond the age and the experience, especially in today's corporate context? Let's start from there.
Brilliant question. Thank you, Azeem. And you're right, because maturity, we often jump to age and experience because, yes, of course, age and experience play a part. But it's more than that. It's around, bit like what you said earlier when you talk about leading into the discomfort. It's leading into the grey of this world. It's not to go into too much detail about what wisdom is, but it's about operating in the grey. It's being able to hold opposing thoughts and seeing the whole. So they can see the discrete points, but they can see the whole so that you can actually operate in the grey and come up with more integrative in their approach rather than the conventional linear thinking, break everything into parts. They can see something beyond the parts. And a lot of it comes to actually also boils down to ego development. So how we grow up as adults. Very much, many books have mentioned this before, but you can't lead others without leading yourself. So in a sense, that's also the crux of it.
Wow, that's very crisp and straightforward. Because when you say maturity, most of the people talks about the age, the experience, and today's context, when you have a generational talk going around the world, right? And when we think about young generation people, so let's say Gen Z, who is very famously known these days, they talk in terms of a high maturity context. When myself and yourself, in that particular age, we never would have thought about thinking like that. But now, the thought process is so much heightened. How do you see that particular component coming in?
Oh, I think I lost the second. Apologies, Azeem. I think I lost you there for a second. But you're right. It's growing up maturity, isn't it? And the Gen Z population of this world. But it's interesting because when you look at the theories of adult development, because sometimes the question comes up as what actually allows people to develop into those more mature phases. Yes, you can learn your way through it, but that's not usually the approach. It's usually around practices like mindfulness and meditation. But actually, not that I'm recommending this for people, but it's about those who've experienced trauma. Trauma can accelerate the growth, but it has to be someone who's experienced the trauma but made sense of it as well, rather than getting lost in a victim loop. So that can happen at any age. And you often see the accelerated growth at younger ages because they've lived through some pretty extreme experiences and made sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on that. Now, let's come to this particular part. Yes, maturity is important, but uncertainty, complexity, these are the words which is truly spoken around the world. And it's like a household now. Everybody has it. Everybody speaks about it. Now, it is often triggers based on the decisions we make, right? Now, how can leaders shift from reaction to response in such an environment? Now, why this I'm asking, I'm trying to connect this whole piece of emotional regulation piece because this also comes through maturity, right? We go through that particular curve when we look back around, okay, oh my God, I've taken such a journey in search of so much of uncertainty, so much of complexity. What is your thought? How can leaders shift this reaction to respond in this particular uncertainty and complexity situation?
I don't think it's a popular answer, what I'm going to say, but
I love it.
It's doing the work. It's doing the internal work. There is no magic wand. There is no answer framework that's going to solve everything. We try and make sense of the world with frameworks, but really it's the experiential internal work that makes the difference. If you don't know where your triggers are coming from, you're never going to have any sense of navigating through them. There's a lovely phrase by Viktor Frankl, moving from reaction to response. And that's that's the growth. The growth lies in that shift from reaction to response. And it's all about gaining awareness of our habits of mind and habits of actions and habits of thoughts. The more awareness you have, the more insight you can get, and the greater the pause that will eventually allow you to make a decision and a choice whether you react or respond. But it means doing the work, getting to know the self, getting the subconscious into the conscious mind. It means noticing and actually paying attention, which is not easy in this world we live in and we've created.
That's quite interesting, and I love that particular thought from Viktor Franklin, who brings that particular space between response and reaction. It's a choice you make. So the choice is always in our hand as leaders. How do you really reconnect the whole thought process around that? So it's important that maturity piece also really comes. How do you foresee the uncertainty? How do you really respond to the complexity? I think one of the best example in the recent past is the COVID. I have not ever experienced a pandemic. I don't know, and how about you? Now we can tell our children, our grandchildren, like, hey, look, we went through COVID. It's very uncertain. This is very complex. We had masks, we had social distancing, and we went into Zoom. That's where the maturity comes in. Again, as you said, we have to do that inner work, and I totally agree on it. But here comes the next shift time. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to sit there for a second. It was the difference is people who can make sense of the COVID experience in a way that takes them beyond their current thinking. So, for example, someone could quite easily stay stuck in that victim loop. And I've been there. I've been in the victim loop. We're all human. We all have these moments. But it's how you make sense of it that basically enables you to let go of the ego. It's that attachment to, I want things to be perfect. I want the world to be this. I want this. I want that. I want the right answer. I want the right company. I want the right leader. The more we mature, the more we let go of that, the more we transcend and go, that's the growth. That's the work.
Yeah.
It's letting go.
I think I agree on that. I think it's important that particular piece is rightly set. That's where the intention also comes in. Here comes the next part of the question. I'm like, connect now. Now, cultures plays a vital role into this particular aspect. Now, how well mature you are, how well experienced you are, how much aware you are, if that particular culture does not support you, then we are going to have a big problem there. Now, I'm trying to really link the element of psychological safety in that particular space and talk about resilience. How do you think this whole emotional maturity leaders impact the organization culture? How can that impact the culture? Now, we always talk about having experience is so important. But do you think, can that experience be a barrier? Can that maturity be a barrier in terms of culture?
Do you mean in terms of the more mature, can they ever be a barrier to the cultures that we...
Yeah.
Interesting question. So when we look at more mature leaders, they tend to step back a little bit. They don't tend to want to be at the front line because they are more about, it's not themselves anymore that matters. It's more serving the greater good. Because by definition of serving the greater good, they won't harm the organization, and actually they'll enable the organization to breathe and evolve as it should. Where they might cause confusion is where you meet some of the other people around them who may be earlier stage in their maturity, who will find these leaders to be a little too abstract, maybe a little too out there, not directive enough. And that's where the challenge comes in. But then again, the flip side, again, is some of these mature leaders will know how to adapt to the less mature people, population, a group around them. So they should be able to adapt. The question is, will they want to, or will they delegate to their teams? So it depends a little bit on the person, the context. Because like I said, they don't like to be in the limelight anymore. They like to step back. So
yeah, I think again, the word choice comes there.
Yes.
It's a choice they have to make in terms of context. Now, just looping that particular... Yeah, go ahead.
No, just a quick example of some of the very well-known leaders who were at the later stage, was the Mandelas and Gandhis of this world. They were at the front line. They didn't step back. They truly believed, so they just kept on going, and they brought people together in a way that was beyond their own individual needs.
Yeah, but it's quite different at the moment, how the world is running through this particular journey in the current context. I think you are right. The Mandelas and Gandhis, how they've evolved, built people around to pick a common object to make that particular movement move really faster. One of the example is Mother Teresa, how she ran the whole movement in terms of compassion, in terms of gratitude, create a wider scope for people to live around. As something is so important. Now, a little bit context in terms of mature leaders' impact on organizational culture. How do you think they are supporting people in terms of teams, especially navigating ambiguity and under pressure? Teams. How do you think navigating ambiguity and pressure? How does that emotional the maturity leadership helps teams to navigate?
Okay. Well, it's a little bit like what you just said, actually. They bring together, because they can handle opposing thoughts, because they can see the grey of the world, because they're integrative in their approach. They can see beyond individual needs, but they can see both individual needs and team needs. So they hold their balance and they let it flow, very much flowing through the polarities of life. Rather than trying to find the answer, they kind of find the little greyness that works for all the views. As one of my coaches recently said to me, he just always seems to know the right thing for everybody in the room. And that's it. They say something that every single person, no matter what stage they're at, can actually see that connecting point. They kind of start believing in the leader. That's the magic of late stage leaders. So suddenly the ambiguity and pressure are manageable. They're surmountable because you're doing something for the greater good, something that the teams really believe in, so they can deal with it. They support each other in that environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It does make sense. And I'm trying to see whether I can loop this question into it. How much of psychological safety creates with that particular experience?
So psychological safety is around a sense of belonging and a sense of being able to say things without being judged. And that is, I don't want to be too simplistic, but it's almost pretty much the definition of later stage leaders. Because if you compare to the earlier stage leaders, maybe that will help. Earlier stage leaders tend to be quite black and white. They're right. Everybody else is wrong. So without being too simplistic, it's very much, this is my way and we do it this way. So it can be very cutting. It can cut people off. It can feel very much like dictatorial. I'm talking a little bit in extremes for the example. But the later stage ones will be much more around getting all the views, finding the balance of the views, putting it together as a whole. So by definition, that makes everyone feel included. They'll draw out the creativity. They'll draw out the black and white. They'll draw out the individuals versus the teams and bring it together in something even greater, because everyone's kind of had an input a little bit. Does that?
So
yeah,
absolutely. So, and leaders input is so much important in that space, right? To bring that people around that and creating that element of trust.
Yes.
So vital in that particular process. I think that's what I think you're truly connecting to the dots for me. So let's come to the context of, in your experience, how can organizations support or either way hinder the development of actual leadership at scale? There's two parts of it.
The hinder is actually almost easy because I see this all the time, unfortunately. I see more of the hinder examples than I see of the support examples, but we'll get there slowly. The hinder examples, and it's very, very tough to get out of this, I get it. It's that short-term view. It's just being able to see 3 months ahead and that's it. It's being very black and white on the now, the profits, the stakeholders. Things are changing, the shareholders, sorry. Things are changing. And leaders are coming through who can balance with the long term a bit better. But going back to some of your early questions, it's the earliest maturity leaders who are very short term. The more mature you become, the longer timeline you have. So again, getting people to understand their level of maturity and how to grow through it will help them see a longer timeline, which will help organizations support them. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. But that I see that hindering all the time. That bottom line focus is important. I get it, but balance. In terms of supporting it, I'm going to draw on the work by the Centre of Creative Leadership, I think it is, from the CCL. Summarize it very nicely. And I've seen this in practice a lot. It's very much like what I mentioned earlier, is creating that trauma experience, but obviously we don't do trauma for people. So they call it heat experiences. So the best example is sending someone to live abroad for a few years in a completely different culture, completely different environment, because that is a traumatic experience for the first few months. But also it's encouraging people not just to go abroad and to live in their bubble and only find people from their country, but to actually go and learn the language, go and learn the culture, go and get out there, eat the food, do whatever. So there's a difference in how you do it. And that's where the CCL is very good because they have this pillar of 3. So it's the heat experiences, alongside having a peer group that has very different views. So it's not just peers within your company, it's peers with different cultures, different companies, different sectors, as much as you can mix it up, just to really throw your own world off balance. But if you don't have, and I'm sorry to say it, but I have to say it, but if you don't have a late stage coach or a vertical development coach to make sense of it, all those experiences could be wasted and just pass you by.
I think that's truly resonant the whole picture. I like the last part, that if you don't have a coach, I think that makes a bigger impact. So after learning so much of things, if you can't really connect the whole piece there, and that's a question mark. Thank you very much for sharing that. Before we move to the rapid fire round, I don't want to surprise you. I'll give you this rapid fire round. That's very surprising for you. And before we move to that segment, and I just want to ask, what's your recommendation for leaders? Look out for that particular maturity. It is true to this current context. We can speak about past. We can speak about our experiences, but in today's context, an employee staying in an organization, the time frame is very limited. They stay for 3 years, 5 years span, not like those days. They used to stay in organizations for 10 years, 15 years. Now, with that coming into that particular context, I'm just curious to know, what would be your recommendation for organization and its leaders? How do you develop this whole so-called maturing organization?
So it's very much that framework, which is what I encourage my own clients to do, is get those heat experiences, get those challenges. It doesn't have to be abroad. It can be a project that takes you completely out of your comfort zone. Not so much that you're going to break, obviously. There's always a balance. But it's really get those experiences and get yourself out of your comfort zone of your peers. Talk to people. I'm always smile to myself because this is very common. I think I can count maybe on one hand the people who don't do this. I have so many leaders who come to me, I want to be strategic, but they have no network outside their own company. They don't speak to anybody outside their sector. So how can you be strategic if you don't know what's going on in the rest of the world? You've got to get yourself out there. And it is getting part of community groups, work groups, networking outside the spectrum, depending which country you're in. There are many available. And it's really doing the work yourself. So the company's encouraging individuals to do the work, but also encouraging things like, it's a very old concept, but doing it in a modern way, like shadowing people, going to actually spend shoes off, and also doing things like supporting creative groups, so people can actually share their opinions, and maybe some things sent to the board, some things don't, but allowing to stumble through.
Yeah, I think the whole piece of uncomfortable is what we're talking about. Getting uncomfortable with uncertainty and complexity will help you to build that maturity in terms of leadership. Right.
And the more the less you think of it in terms of me, myself, and I. So then it doesn't feel uncomfortable because it's got nothing to do with myself and I, because me, myself is only a construct that you've invented anyway. So it's completely different.
Yeah.
And then you say, what was I worried about? Nothing. It's all fine.
And that's the learning curve. That's the learning curve we are talking about. Yeah. Brilliant. All right. Thank you very much, Anne, for sharing that. Now we are coming to the final segment. That's called rapid fire round. I'm going to throw you some questions. What I need is short answers, and you don't have time to think. It's going to be very straightforward. Are you ready?
I am. Go for it.
Right. So your first question.
Yes.
What's one emotions leaders should never ignore?
All of them.
Give me one.
All of them.
Okay.
Emotion can't be ignored.
Yeah, I agree. Agreeing. It should be embraced. It's embraced. Right. Thank you. Right. Question number 2. I think this would be pretty straightforward. A book that shaped your thinking on complexity and uncertainty.
Road less traveled.
Okay. Brilliant. That's straightforward. Your question number 3. What's your personal go-to when you feel uncertain?
The jungle.
The greenery, the nature.
It's more than that. It's the universe, the wholeness, the beyond me. Lose the me, myself, and I. It's not about that.
Super. Right. The last question. If you could redefine one leadership buzzword in today's context, what would it be and why?
I would do. Again, this is maybe not a popular answer. Radical candor drives me crazy. And the other one is accountability. It also drives me crazy. It's turned into a blame thing. The accountability should be responsibility. Yeah. Radical. If anyone looks up the word radical means you're doing something completely crazy and insane. I forget the exact definition. We don't want radicals out there. Just want humans to be human to each other. And I've seen radical candor become again this stick. Look, I was honest with them. Yeah, you attacked them viciously. So people are forgetting the core of the message of those books, which were great books, don't get me wrong, but the buzzwords have lost the initial meaning.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And that's the end of our segment. And before I let you go, what would your key message you want to give to our audience and viewers in terms of leadership maturity?
I really think it's just keep growing as an adult. It might feel scary, it might feel daunting, but it's the most incredible journey, and your people around you will be grateful. Just your people and your team, your family.
Brilliant. So, Anne, thank you very much for such a grounded and insightful conversation you had with me today. I think we often talk about leadership as strategy, influence, execution, but today we explored in terms of not deeper layer. I think a little bit surface deeper layer, but there's more. The maturity state presenting uncertain and in a very uncomfortable way. To have that courage to admit that we don't have all the answers, and leaders doesn't need to have all the answers, and the emotional capacity to lead even when things are complex and unclear. So, in a world that's constantly shifting, the leaders who will thrive, not necessarily the ones loudest voices. But those with the deepest inner calm and the willingness to grow to discomfort is something we always need to grow with. And that's where the maturity comes in. This is my understanding of the whole conversation, what I learned from you. I believe our listeners got plenty of key takeaways. Of course, you can get connected to Anne with her LinkedIn, and I'll drop her webpage where you can get connected to her, explore her, what she works around, and learn more from and from this particular note. So, Anne, thank you very much, and it has been a great pleasure having you in the cafe. And thank you for sharing this maturity wisdom with our community.
Thank you, Azeem. It's been fun. Some great questions. Appreciate it. And a great summary. So yes, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ei Café with Azeem. If this episode resonates with you, don't miss these powerful conversations too. Episode number 117, Neurodivergence in the Workplace, Challenges and Solution with Professor David Clutterback. Episode number 102, Human-Centered Leadership, Unveil the Strength in Vulnerability with Kulma Hay. Episode number 34, Developing a Creative Leadership Culture with Wanlai Jumono. Every episode is a step closer into deep power of emotional intelligence in leadership, teams, and lives. If it sparked reflections, clarity, or action, leave a review, share your thoughts, or pass it to someone who will get the benefit out of it. This is the Ei Café with Azeem, and checking out from the cafe, my name is Azeem Zahir. And until next time, tune into your emotion, turn them into insight. Stay safe. God bless you.